Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Javier Novoa with The Real Javier Novoa, a channel, a platform, and a modality where we apply the principles of interiorism to rapid lifestyle transformation. I have a real treat for you today. Actually, it's a fulfillment of one of my intentions. We have with us one of the mentors of our channel, although he doesn't know he's a mentor.
No.
But we have with us the great, the amazing Trevor Blake, who is the real deal, ladies and gentlemen. He's almost a billionaire. He's a major figure in the pharmaceutical industry. Just to give you a little bit of an idea about Trevor's background, uh, in his 40s, he founded a company called QOL with $200. And this is crazy. It says on his LinkedIn that he generated 76% net profit on $12 million a year. And he eventually sold the company for over $100 million. And according to his perspective on this, he did this simply by using the power of intention that we're going to talk about here. He's also founded another company that is called Neovia Oncology, which makes cancer medications. As well as that, I believe he's founded, I think, Trevor, you said you founded 5 companies all in all for
I
over $400 million.
so I'm at number 7 now. Javier. So I don't
Seven
I
now.
don't update my website as often as I probably should, but I'm a bit addicted to
That's right.
building companies and selling companies. It's just so much fun. So I'm on company number 7 now.
And all of them have been successes. There's 7 out of 7, from what I understand.
Yeah, I have an
And
equation, a process. It's like plug and play, just keep doing the same thing. I have to
it's
be
a
honest with
process.
you, Javier. Most people who talk like this, you think, okay, you must work 20 hours a day. I only work a couple of hours a day, and it's the system and the model that makes the difference. That allows me to build multiple companies on the same business plan, the same hub model.
And it doesn't fail. And one of the things that amazes me about you is that in your childhood, from what I understand, you had a background of bullying, you had some ethnic violence, and your refuge was that you went to libraries and you read these autobiographies of great people. And that's where basically you took a lot of the principles and the processes that you use. The thing that amazes me about you, Trevor, and why you're actually one of my role models is you're one of only 2 people that I know of who have these 3 things in common. First of all, you're the real deal. You're pretty much a billionaire, from what I understand, if not a billionaire, very close. The second thing is that you're self conscious in these principles. On this channel, we call it interiorism. It's basically knowing that there is no outer world and that everything that you do is on the interior. You know these principles self-consciously. Now, anyone to be successful, probably someone like Elon Musk, they know these principles intuitively, but they don't know them self-consciously. They couldn't tell you these principles. And then the third thing is that you're willing to share it with the world, and it's what we appreciate. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with, there was a great Russian billionaire named Boris Berezovsky, and he also knew these principles. In fact, he wrote a book about it called How to Earn a Fortune, and he basically exposed these principles as well to the world. So I think that's amazing about you, that you actually know these principles and you're willing to teach us. Why are you willing to teach the world these principles?
Well, it's a responsibility, and I've been very lucky in life to have been surrounded by amazing female power. And sometimes I think when a man talks about female power, it makes people sit up a little bit. Um, so I had an amazing mother who showed me the meaning of never giving up, indefatigable. I had an amazing wife who was clairvoyant, clairaudient. She died in 2020. We were together 40 years, and now I'm really the luckiest guy in the world because I got married last year to this amazing Canadian woman who's a world-renowned artist who inspires me to want to be better today than I was yesterday. That for me has always been the most amazing motivation, the most amazing source. But I'm a physicist by training and by education, and so the thing about being a physicist is that we observe life and we try to figure out, sometimes clumsily, how and why things work the way they do. And then when we kind of figure it out, we can put some tools and techniques together, and we can say, okay, I'll apply this in this aspect of life. If I'm a teacher, I'll do it this way. If I'm an artist, I'll do it this way. I've just done it in business because I've always enjoyed entrepreneurship. everything I've done, everything that's come my way has come this way of feminine power. And to answer the question more directly, my mother used to say to me, and then without being encouraged, my late wife Lynn said to me, always do the right thing, no matter what it costs. Always do the right thing. And so for me, the right thing is I figured out a system for those you elegantly and eloquently put together that an introduction. Books literally saved my life. And so from those biographies, I saw that people had these patterns of behavior. And to me, as a scientist, it seemed like an equation. So I thought, okay, I'll take this equation and I'll apply it to my life in relationships, in health, and also in wealth. And so I did. And it was so beautiful, but I'm constantly reminded in my head, always do the right thing. So I waited until I could prove it worked. And then you mentioned the first company, Qual Medical, QOL Medical. I started it, like you said, for a couple $100. I sold it a few years later for 105.5 million. I used an equation to build that company. And the equation is based around intentions, which, as you say, is very much internal work. And so I set my intention to sell this company. I've sold this company for at least $100 million. When you've done that, you have to do the right thing. And there's two right things. One, go do it again. And two, tell people about it, share it, let everyone else have the same joy and experience. I mean, you mentioned Elon Musk. I just finished his biography, ironically. I felt exhausted at
By
the end.
Isaacson,
Sorry?
the one with by Isaacson.
Yeah, yeah, who did Steve Jobs' biography too. Yeah,
Excellent.
excellent.
Yes.
They're really well written books and insightful and get deep into his I mean, his mentality and his subconscious and the battle between his subconscious and his conscious. Really, really fascinating. He exhausts me because I feel like I haven't even begun to do anything yet because he's done so much. And you read my biography or my resume and you say, oh, this guy's done a lot, but I feel like I haven't even begun yet because of that. But here's the key thing. I believe in success with balance. I don't believe in success at the cost of everything. And Elon Musk believes in a different thing, and that's fine. Who am I to judge? He believes in success. And as a result of that, his relationships and his lifestyle and everything are completely smashed to pieces. I
I've
never
suffered.
wanted that. I really loved my family. I idolized my mother. My father actually was unemployed my whole life. Was not a bad man. He didn't drink or anything like he smoked, but he didn't in those days, everyone did. But he didn't drink or gamble or anything like that. He just had given up on life. I think because my mother was given 6 months to live when I was 7. She had breast cancer. And it just affected him so much mentally that he gave up on life and just sat at home reading books. And I was able to observe him and say, I don't want to be like that. And I was able to observe my mother, who would walk 5 miles a day with 2 sticks because the cancer got into her bones, to work half a day in a delicatessen. I said, I want to be like that person. And the reason she did it was to feed her 3 kids. We were so poor. That's the only food we got. And it wasn't that she could buy food. She didn't make enough money to buy food. Everything that was expiring, she would bring home. And we would live on expiring food, which is fine because it
Sure.
hasn't
But
expired yet.
had she known a lot of these techniques and processes that you teach, she might have even been able to achieve more with greater ease, correct?
Yes, but then again, she came from the World War II era where you didn't really talk about these type of things, and also where spirituality, entrepreneurship, and science are 3 different silos in her day, right? They don't mix. I've always felt that they're ingredients in a great recipe. They all come together. My businesses wouldn't be as successful as they were if I didn't bring in an element of spirituality into them. My
Precisely.
Yeah, my writing wouldn't be what it is if I didn't bring in a bit of structure to it that I get from
And
entrepreneurship.
Mr. Blake, you've hit on the core of what I basically wanted to draw out of you in this interview because I think I've watched every interview that there is on YouTube with you, and you've gone through a lot of your life, and it's beautiful. And I'd encourage people to watch that. What I want to draw out of you is how to make this soup that you call it of business, of science, and of spirituality. I want to reverse engineer how you came to what you came to because I know that you've talked about reading the autobiographies of great people, but it couldn't have been just that. You have to have been introduced to spirituality perhaps in your youth, perhaps in your early 20s as I was, and I want to know what spiritual influences you drew upon, because what we say on our channels, what you say, is that we're not interested in enlightenment per se. We're interested in utilizing these principles for success. But the deeper knowledge you have of spiritual principles, the more you're able to create your own tools. So, what was your introduction to spirituality? Because I didn't really even find it discussed a lot in three simple steps. What gurus or teachers or authors did you read to sort of get the basis, or did this all just come to you, which by intuition?
What a wonderful question. That's probably one of the best questions I've ever had in podcasts and interviews, to be honest with you. It's a brilliant question, very insightful. So I got really lucky, and I got lucky, as we all do, through adverse circumstances. So my as a family, we were evicted from the place we were living. We were living in Liverpool. We lived above a shop, or store, as you would say in America. And it's a two room place. My brother, sister, and I slept on mattresses on the floor. We didn't have beds. And we got evicted for non-payment of rent. And we escaped in the middle of the night in the back of an old van. And in those days, you could drive 50 miles and hide. There weren't the freeways like there are today. People couldn't find you. So the creditors would turn up the next day and there's no family there. And the money's gone because, we've done a moonlight flit, literally. Where we ended up turned out to be in a rural part of Britain that I'd never even heard of. At 7 years old, I didn't even know this place existed. I didn't even know there were trees. I'd never seen a tree. At 7 years old, I hadn't seen a tree. And I got kind of dropped into this rural lifestyle in a ramshackle farmhouse, like somebody would go through the back of the wardrobe in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or through the Chronicles of Narnia. My life changed like that instantly through adversity. I didn't see it as adversity. I'm 6 to 7 years old. I just saw it as, wow, it's an adventure. We're going out at night, sleeping in a van, freezing cold in late November. And I dropped into this unbelievable experience of immersing in nature because I hadn't been prepared for nature. No one had told me that a tree is a tree because, or a field is a field is because, or a cow is a cow. I saw these cows. I thought they were just huge dogs. I honestly, I had no concept of nature. And because I think I was so innocent and so open-minded with nature, I immersed in it, and nature became my teacher.
You had
And
an
so
instant connection to the nonverbal.
I've never had a mentor. I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing people, but I've never chosen a mentor. I've never listened to a guru. I don't take advice from anyone standing on stage in an Armani suit. I took advice and connected with nature, and I was very lucky because my parents and my brother and sister, who were around about the same age, they did too, and so we became sort of hippie-ish in a non-drug sense. We just immersed in nature. So we'd walk barefooted on the grass. I would, in those days, Saturday after, so school Monday to Friday, then Saturday, I'd walk out the front door at, say, 7:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't walk back in until 5 at night. And no one ever asked where I'd been, or even cared where I'd been, or even thought about me during the time I was gone. I was allowed to go and do what I want. So I'd wander in the woods and I'd find a stream and I'd stand in the stream and I'd feel energy, or I'd see an animal or a bird and actually have communication because I was so innocent. I hadn't yet been told that you're not supposed to do that and that that's all daydreaming. And so I had these amazing experiences and I let nature teach me. And so what I have today is a transformation course. So I call it the transformation experience. It's on my website. You can see trevorgblake.com. And it does the same thing. So I take people. So now, being a physicist, I want to say, well, how did that happen? How does that work? And so I can now show people, okay, these things exist in the universe, these fermions and bosons, these particles, these energies. When you understand that, then you can say, okay, so that means that I can connect with a rabbit or a dog or anything like that. And so that taught me. So it was no mentor, certainly no guru, absolutely no particular religion. I've tried to study as many religions as I can, which I find all, when they get back to the core, all kind of saying the same thing, like the kingdom of God is within. And so
It's
you have,
perennialism, all the perennial philosophy,
yeah, you have this
which is what we
ability
talk
to
about.
create the life experiences you want, but you need tools and techniques. So what I've done is create the tools and techniques. The things I learned I've put together in a compact way, so you don't have to go through the same experience. You don't have to get evicted to learn this. You can just say, okay, I'll use that tool that
And this
Trevor.
is a perfect time. I might not have done this in the introduction. I'm going to put this in the notes, but Trevor Blake has given us a special link, www.trevorblake.com slash Javier, and they're going to give you a $500 discount if you want to do business with Trevor Blake and actually go. I believe that's for the transformation course, right, Mr. Blake?
So I don't have anything to do with this, Javier. I know I have a back end to this business, but I don't know what the back end is. I'm
Oh,
surrounded by
certainly. Well,
I'm surrounded by amazing people, and
the team has given this
yeah,
to
this is
me.
an incredible team, and so they do all this stuff for me. I'm kind of the product. I will wax lyrically as long as you allow me to, and until you tell me to stop rambling, and
Oh, no,
so
certainly.
so the transformation experience. So what happened was one day so I'd written a book, and this was after I sold my first company. I wrote a book called Three Simple Steps in
Which
2012.
we want to delve into. But
And it has the story of my mother's journey through cancer, and it has the story of my journey through life a little bit. It's not a biography, but it's kind of saying, okay, I learned this bit here, and it made this difference, and this is how I used it in my life. And then I move forward, and I learned this bit now, and then I use this in my life. So three simple steps. First one being control of mentality and getting the individual back, that you were the spectacular person you actually were when you arrived, but got kind of taken out of you by the structures of society, parenting and friendships and school and work and all that. And we become a different person than the spectacular person, a bland version of ourselves. So it's to get back to the spectacular you, and then
and
to
by the
connect.
way, this part of the book basically took me out of a slump, so to speak, years ago that I had gotten into by the teachings of Abraham Hicks. We'll perhaps talk about this, which are amazing, by the way, but you get too crazy about it. But yeah, this mentality control, and also the aspect of this is not positive thinking and what the difference is, and we'll delve into that. But this actually basically got me into the sweet spot for actually being able to manifest. But please continue
Well,
with the next
so
steps.
you mentioned Abraham Hicks. I've read Asking It Is Given, and there's one of the oldest tricks in the book is to give people what they want to hear. Give them feel good ideology, and then call it a law or a habit or a channel, and say this information isn't coming from me; it's coming from some godhead somewhere. And everyone falls for it. I mean, we do. We just fall for it. I've fallen for it. Everyone falls for it. And so I always say to everybody, check the background of the person that's bringing the message really carefully. Not Don't just Google it. I mean, really go into it. Make sure that that person has the experience and the education and also the authenticity to give this message. And you can do that with me too. I mean, I invite everybody, check my background, go through it thoroughly.
Sure.
Authenticity is so lacking in the personal. That's why I got into it. So authenticity is so lacking. And so, you know, you could go on YouTube and you could check into a video of a session with any of the people who write this stuff and do this stuff. And if you have any brain cells at all, you'll find the fault immediately in that the questions are posed and the answers are so unscientific and they're actually not correct. That said, the feel good ideology, it makes us feel good about ourselves. It makes us feel better about our lives, but it doesn't last very long. It lasts, I know I've got a lot of friends who go from webinar to webinar to webinar to course to book to course to book, and nothing changes in their lives. And the reason it doesn't change is they're getting a serotonin hit from feeling good about themselves, and then it wears
Precisely,
off.
and we've discussed this a lot on our channel as well.
Oh,
But
that's good.
so I wanted to, and I guess this is the good time, and or do you want to finish the next steps in the book, or do you want to go off on this
No, no.
aspect?
So the three steps are really important. So mentality control is the
Sure.
same. You've got to get that down first, right? So in the transformation experience, we spend a lot longer than you can do in a book in getting the mentality down, so that you're making decisions that are in the best interests of you and everyone else involved, and not because you want to be approved of or loved. Most people are making decisions because they want approval, and we just learn that over time. So it's getting back to the individual, and that can isolate you a bit because now people are looking at you and say, well, who the hell are you? And so you get that down. Then you take, so what that does is build Scientifically, it builds new neural pathways that haven't been polluted by headline news or gossip or complaining. And so then you connect that through nature. So the second part is connecting. The third part is then using that power and targeting, because in all the studies that have been done on what it takes to be successful, as we judge success as a human being, there are only two commonalities. One is self-confidence, which none of us have naturally, and there's tools and techniques to help you get there. And the second is a tendency to set big targets. And so when you have that power through connectivity, then that's when you set the big target, the intention. And it's an internal process. It's completely opposite to goal setting, which is nonsense. And so you set this target, crush time, and you're able to create your life experience. So those are kind of the three steps. Those three steps are then expanded and extrapolated in the transformation experience for anyone who wants to go down that beautiful rabbit hole.
It is an incredible. This is basically the formula, the key. These three steps, just deepening into them. I wanted to go into the fact, and it's actually what a lot of people that I coach and a lot of questioners have a problem with the whole law of attraction aspect. And you touched on it, but it's not about even thoughts or feelings, is it, Trevor? It's about making a decision. It's about getting into the state of that and using basically the power of intention that I want you to dilate on a little bit to basically get yourself there. Because the way I describe is this, and I think you perfectly drove it home to me in your book where you said this is not positive thinking, because you can be very happy and be a poor person. And many billionaires are very depressed. And take it from me, I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and I know that many wealthy people are on antidepressants. So it's feeling good is great, but it's not about feeling good. What's that sweet spot? It's not about feeling, it's not about even thinking it, but we can go in our minds and basically short circuit it. Like you say, if you're in debt, you can go to your mind and say, no, you know what? I'm buying a bottle of champagne cash and I'm toasting that I've paid off my debt. What's that sweet spot? We talk about it in our channel, but if it's not feelings, if it's not thoughts, how do we actually click into that state?
It's time. So
Wow.
there's no such thing as space and there's no such thing as time, but there is a concept called space-time. And so time's an illusion, and most people live with this illusion of a forward-facing arrow. That's how goal setting comes up, stepping stone, stepping stone, stepping stone, see it, I'll see it when I believe it, nonsense and all that kind of stuff. All based on studies that were never done. They're lies, basically.
Certainly.
Time works in a different way, and in the transformation experience, we spend almost a week trying to figure this thing out, this crazy thing called time that allows us to keep our sanity as a human being, having a physical experience. We need time for that. When we understand that everything is energy, and in order for anything to exist, it has to exist in at least 28 dimensions, of which we only know 3. Some people will say time is a 4th dimension. I disagree entirely and wholeheartedly, and stand up on a stage and bang my fist on the table about this. It's not a dimension. Time's an illusion. And so when we understand that, we can give ourselves a tool and technique that is so powerful it blows people's minds. And that is that we think in past tense. There's no can and will. There's no I hope, I wish, one day wouldn't that be great? We crush time by simply changing the way we think and talk. And this is not positive thinking. This is smart science.
Which
And so,
parenthetically, Hebrew and Arabic is always in past tense even when describing the present. It's the biblical.
and for very good reason. And so one of my great endeavors and studies in life has been to take religious text back to its original context. First of all, its societal context is really important. Secondly, the tone of the words is more important than the word itself. And then thirdly, the power it gives you to understand when you start to think I have instead of I want is so incredibly powerful. That one simple word. So you mentioned, my first company, Qual Medical. So with Qual Medical, before I'd even figured out how to organize the company or start it, my intention was I sold, past tense. So there's an equation for intentions. There's 5 P's. I sold my company for at least $100 million. And that was it. I didn't do anything else in that. And I built the company and I sold it for 105.5 million about 5 years later and felt really great about it because I was expecting it at that point. There are lots of little tools and techniques around that we use to add power to that statement and that affirmation, but it's crushing time. Time is the one thing that absolutely nobody on earth can possibly understand, including me, but we can hack it a little bit. We can trick it and we can think in the past tense. So I have a visual tool called time imagination. It's a way to, I call it a mini mind movie. And it's a way to get to the point and say, okay, typically you'll say, I want to build a company. Now I have to figure out how to do it. If you did it, if you were Elon Musk and his biography, looking at his biography, when you get to the end of the biography, you could look back and say, now I understand how that worked. He went this way, then that way. He met this person. This went wrong. He's vomiting in the toilet from fear. He's doing all these kind of things. Now I see how it all worked out. But at the beginning, you cannot predict any of that. And so if we take ourselves to the end result and focus only on the end result, and so for me, I focused only on the day after I sold Qual Medical for at least $100 million. And what was I going to do that day? I was going to spend the whole day in my pajamas. That was my intention, to spend the whole day in pajamas. And I did it. I flew from where I am now in Southern California up to, I have an apartment in Bellevue in Washington. And as I was getting up to get off the plane, my cell phone dinged and someone said, congratulations, deal has been done. Just like that. And it was great. And I got a car. I have a chauffeur car, took me to my apartment. I put my pajamas on. I spent 24 hours in pajamas. And that was what I did with my intention. I crushed time because I now had the financial independence that allowed me to be the idiot I wanted to be that day. And I actually went to my favorite Italian restaurant in pajamas and slippers, and no one said anything. No, no
That is
one
amazing.
no one questioned me. No one asked me to leave or anything. It was great. So this tool and technique puts you in the takes you to the space of the day after. The day after I achieve my big intention. How do I feel? What am I going to do? What am I looking like? Who am I with? And then it turns up, and it turns up exactly the way that you planned, which is a beautiful thing.
Now, is this your definition of intention? Basically, crunching time, crushing time, and being in that time so that you are it, and then it doesn't really matter what's going on the outer?
So it is that, but so there's a formula because I'm a scientist. I have to have formulas. I'm allowed them.
Sure.
Um, I'm also English, so I'm allowed catchphrases. So I call them the five P's. Uh,
Certainly.
so so there's five P's, and the P's are really vital. So an intention must be huge. The bigger it is, the easier it comes. Believe it or not, it's a paradox. It's actually a physics paradox. It creates a thing called superfluidity, which is flow without resistance. I explain all this in transformation experience, but you have to get your head around it a little bit. It sounds complicated, but then when you get in there and read it, you think, oh yeah, of course. I've had that experience many times in my life. I didn't realize what it was. So it has to be really
Intuitively, it seems to me one of the reasons is because the bigger it is, the less you can do about it now. And so you're not even worried about that. You're just saying, well, it's so impossible. I don't even know what the next step is. So therefore, I just can have to imagine it, have to be in it.
yeah, and then that's exactly it. I mean, it's well said. I mean, I took 272 pages in a book to say that. You said it in 30 seconds. That's exactly what it is. But you follow this formula, and it's so much fun, and it takes all the stress off because you don't have to believe it. You just do it, and then enjoy the fruits. I mean, I've got some great examples. Obviously, testimonial is the most important thing for proving any. The proof of the pudding is always in the eating of it.
Sure. But
Uh,
the five P's were, I'm sorry, did you want to just list them out for us?
so I can, but you need to understand what's behind them. So powerful
Sure.
means huge. Personal, this is a hard one for people. You can only have intentions for yourself. You can't bring another human being into it, not your children, not your spouse, not your partner. This is a tough one, but I explain scientifically why that is the case and why when you do that, typically when you are in your pajamas, they're there with you too. Okay, so powerful personal past tense. It's always getting into the feeling of how it was, not how is it gonna. happen.
I had a great day today, as you do, I believe, when you wake
Exactly.
up.
Exactly. This meeting went brilliantly. This podcast went brilliantly. Okay.
Well, there you go.
So when before I would walk in a boardroom when I was in the regular corporate world, I would do that. I would say to myself, voice in my head, I would say this meeting went brilliantly, but also I would imagine the people in the room patting me on the back and smiling at me and loving me instead of what was happening before I figured this technique out. I'd walk into the meeting room and everyone's grumpy and a lot of them don't like me and some of them are going to target me and all this kind of stuff. And when I changed that around to this meeting went brilliantly in my head with my image, they always went brilliantly. So it's exactly what it is. So, personal, powerful, past tense. Now I'm going to use a word that's very new agey, positive, but that doesn't mean positive thinking. That means that your intention should be for something you want and not about what you don't have or you don't want. This is really crucial because most people are thinking, let's use a couple of obvious examples. Let's say it's New Year and someone says, okay, I'm overweight, I want to lose 20 pounds. They start thinking about weight and they start thinking about losing weight and they start thinking about what that means. And so they end up getting more weight because thoughts are energy too. It goes out into the universe. Energy can only stay as its energy or convert to another form. That's how we become
I
human.
want to stop being a fat slob is probably not the
No, that's not.
formulation.
That's not. No, you will become a fat slob. No, so you say, I am fit, trim, and healthy. I am. Present tense. Beautiful. Crush time. I am fit, trim, and healthy. And proof of the pudding is always in the eating. I always challenge people to say, guess my age. And no one ever does. So I am fit, trim, and healthy is an intention that I've had for 30 years. I've said it every day, several times a day. I am fit, trim, and healthy, and I am. I'm really fit and trim for someone my age, and very healthy. So it's understanding, the P's of it all, and the fifth P is by far the hardest for anyone to grasp, and that is keep it private. And this goes
Of
against
course.
almost every life coach I've ever heard. I don't know why anyone would need a life coach because the kingdom of God is within. It's inside you. You've got everything you need. So you call it internalism. Everything's there. You just got to remember it. It's like a journey
Is
to.
it, Mr. Blake, I've always thought because Jesus said, go forth and tell no one, even in Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad said, do not tell anyone about this. Is it because by telling the person, you're sort of by default giving them a power already? You're telling them, and then implicitly you're seeking their approval. And so
It's
you're putting it in their
it's
hands?
yeah, it's all of those things. I view it from a physicist standpoint, and my personal experience has been when I've stood up in the crowd and said, I intend to do this, this has happened in my life. People would laugh and say, who the hell are you? And what makes you think you can do that? You can't build a company. You're not qualified. You're a junior manager. You're not qualified to be a CEO and stuff like that. That can really, we let that in, right? That can really hurt us and it can set you
Unless
back.
you're Henry Ford, and then that gave him fuel, so to speak.
Yes and no, and it gave me fuel too. It doesn't half knock you back at first, but then I have tools and techniques that can help you come back forward, including what we were just discussing. You play your intention right at that moment when someone knocks you back. You can use that as fuel, as motivation. That's for sure. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's the other thing that happened, which people don't think about. People who love you don't want you to make a fool of yourself. And so when you say out loud to somebody, okay, let's say you don't understand intention, you're looking forward and you say, I'm going to be a billionaire. And they will say, well, good for you, Trevor. Good for you, have you? But in their minds, they're saying, oh, I'll be there for him when it doesn't happen. I'll help him. Now, thoughts are energy. So what you've got is two different types of energy that none of you can see or feel that are causing what we call interference. There's only two types of interference allowed in energy. One is constructive, one is destructive. To be constructive, the energies have to be at the same phase. I have never met anybody who thought the way that I think. Everyone I would speak to would say, I've never met anybody who thinks the way I think or they think. And so the energies become interference and it flatlines. So think of it like
So you're
Thinking
automatically introducing like a pocket of disequilibrium, so to speak, into the
you
mix.
are destructing the creative energy by sharing, because the person's love for you is going to flatline your energy. So I hear a lot of people who bang on about law of attraction, which is not a law, by the way. It has no scientific basis, but law of attraction and ask and it's given. Wonderful multi-level marketing, but I mean, I ask you, um, they say, shout it from the rooftop. Tell everybody what your goal is. Tell everybody where you're going. It's disastrous to do that. And this is really
Exactly.
important. If your listeners and viewers take nothing away from this interview other than that, keep your intentions private always.
Don't tell anybody.
And nobody. So in 40 years of marriage to Lynn, she and I never shared intentions. She had her intentions, I had my intentions. We never shared them because our motivation for achieving them is very different. I made the mistake one time of bringing partners into a business. I did it the one time and learned my lesson, never did it again. And so I had these two partners. We were in a hotel room in New York. We had a bottle of wine, and I asked them, "Why are you getting into the business with me?" And I had my motivation. My motivation was at that time, as probably my third company, and my motivation was a little more impactful than the first time, which was to prove people wrong. One person in the room said, "I want to put my kids through college." And the other person said, "I want to get rich quick." And as soon as we'd voiced that together, the three of us, we almost became enemies in that moment, because they're thinking, "Oh, Trevor's got his head in the clouds. That's his reason for doing it. It's probably not going to work now." And the other guy's saying, "Well, I just want to get in and out quickly." Well, he's not going to be a long-term player. So it caused so much destruction amongst the three of us just by sharing our motivation for wanting to achieve the same thing, which was to build a successful company. So you always keep it to yourself, always.
Is that why you also try to bring on as few partners and employees as possible in your ventures?
I've never hired an employee since I started my first company.
Oh, 0.
So
And that's
zero.
probably
So I've been a band of one. The secret is really structuring well. So how you start up is really important. Most startups fail because of 82% of failures are for the one same reason, which is cash flow mismanagement. I have the tools and techniques to help everyone get over that and figure that out.
certainly.
So I have a particular business model that gives you a better chance of succeeding.
Sure.
It's a plug and play. That's what I've done all the time. But the
So
reason
just to oh,
sorry, Javi. I'm just saying the reason for the no employees is that when I looked at my regular career, I spent probably 75% of my time holding the hands of disgruntled employees. And it's
sure.
so stressful. It's so stressful. I just didn't want it in my life.
This segues into the part because we have limited time here, but I just the 5 Ps again of intention. It's, powerful, personal, past tense,
All present
and
tense.
private. Sorry, excuse me, yeah. Oh, present tense,
It can
but
be. It can
past
be.
tense,
It can be.
the past tense.
I am a brilliant, successful businessman is a good intention. So it can be present tense or past tense.
Precisely, and keep it very private. But I wanted to segue into this, and I've asked a lot of spiritual teachers because a lot of people get confused in this. And in fact, you went on to how you actually structure your private companies. What role does action play in this? Because we would assume if we have the intention, then no action is forthcoming, but yet action happens. So Ludwig von Mises said, the great economist, that action is an offshoot of thought. There's really no difference between thought and action. So, Mr. Blake, what is action, just briefly, and what role does it actually play in intentions? If you assume that's already done, what action do I need to take? Or am I simply pulled to it? And it
No,
seems
no,
like
no,
I
no, no, no. That would be law of attraction. The idea being you sit in a chair and it turns up at the front door. It's such nonsense and it's so dangerous and has ruined a lot of people's lives. And I'll go on stage, I'll go to court and say that and show evidence. So the important thing is, so I call it reacting forward rather than action, because we tend to be, as humans, we tend to think, okay, I'm going for this target. Now I have to figure out what to do, and we take action, and often those actions are not in our best interests. So what I say is, so when you, because we're all connected by a thing called the Higgs field. So when you set an intention, you are basically just a bunch of fermions and bosons in the Higgs field, which is this energy field that connects everything, proven in 2012. You're in there shining like a light, and stuff will come your way. You'll attract to you that which you need, but you have to react to it. So typically what happens is I'll give a great personal example, probably the most powerful, which is about relationships. So my wife died December 2020. She made me commit before she died to not leaving the planet. Um, but I couldn't possibly consider being with somebody else. I couldn't imagine holding somebody else's hand or kissing someone else on the head or something. I just couldn't possibly imagine that. So I kind of determined that I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And then after a year and a half of that, I thought, this really sucks. This is really no fun whatsoever. I want to share. I've got these great adventures. I want to share it with somebody. So I committed to an adventure, but on the condition that I don't do it alone, that I have a companion. Now I know I've been practicing this enough to know that, okay, after that commitment, the commitment ritual is really, really important. It's in transformation experience and not in 3 simple steps. So
Which I don't know if you saw, we did one on our channel, by the way.
yeah. So it's so important because you're saying to the universe, I'm ready for this, I'm worthy for this, and I'm willing to do what it takes. So I said, I'm willing to do what it takes. I want a companion. Okay. The very next day, life started throwing clues at me from all over the place that hadn't been there before. And so they said, send a text to this person, go here. And I did that. So having not traveled since Lynn had died, I find myself in the back end and beyond of this place in Canada, meeting somebody I'd never met before, but knew who that person was. And we got married in November the 26th, 2022. The only reason that could happen is because I stopped asking how or why, who, where, and then just went with the clues that life threw my way. It's such an amazing story. It'll become a book by itself. But if I tried to think it forward, it never would have happened. So you have to react to the clues. So suddenly you think, you know what? I feel like I fancy a latte. I'll go down to my local Starbucks, even though you don't necessarily like lattes, and even though you don't necessarily like Starbucks. And you go down there, and the minute you go down there, you bump into somebody and spill your latte over their clothes, and you form this connection, and that person becomes the investor in your company. It's that
So
type of reaction.
is this where mentality control, here's the way I see it, Mr. Blake, is that because to have something, as we've said, you don't have to feel positive, you don't have to think positive. But if you're not feeling good, you're not actually going to hear the clues that the universe gives you. So is mentality control basically about keeping that receiver clear so that you can receive the clues? Because as you said, oftentimes it's not going to be immediately obvious that that's what's going to lead you to your end.
So it's eyes wide open, and it's accepting whatever comes your way, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel.
So
It's
even if it makes
likely
you feel uncomfortable, lean
it's
into
likely to
that.
make you feel uncomfortable. And so what you do is you check in with your intuition. So you'll say, okay, intellectually, this makes no sense. But here in my soul, in my solar plexus, I call this the torso one, the brain heart solar plexus connection. In my torso one, it just feels right, even though it's crazy. And you go with that. And you follow the clue, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. If you try to follow comfort, nothing will change. And so life does this to you. Life deliberately shows you the most important clue, which is basically, you've never done this before, but you need to do it. And so, in that example I used a minute ago, I hadn't traveled for almost 2 years. The prospect of packing a case on my own for the first time in my life broke my heart. I had to go to my favorite restaurant and have a glass of wine and something to eat. And they said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can actually pack a case and travel on my own." And they was fine. A couple of glasses of wine. Okay, off you go. You can do it. Then I had to fly to this place that was in the middle of nowhere that I've never heard of before, never been to. And then when I get to that place thinking, what did I just do? I'm like a fish out of water right now. what did I do and how am I here and why, but let it flow. And then the clues started coming in from all over the place. And then the next thing I know, I meet this amazing person and just had the same instant connection that I had with Lynn 40 years before, just instant, like, well, where have you been? and her connection was the same, like, wow, the room just fell away. Where have you been? That's following the clues. But if I analyzed it intellectually, I wouldn't have done it because it made no sense.
So you have a great book called the 5 Hour Workday, I believe it is, and you've also talked about how in your 20s when you were actually in management, you made it seem as if to others that you worked a lot, but you didn't work a lot. What I'm trying to get to for our viewers, because I get a lot of questions about this. What's the difference between our modality and just the Elon Musk modality of working 17 hours a day? What's the distinction? Is it that the actions that we're taking are inspired actions and we're not trying to figure it out? Is that what but you still have to make some effort? Or is there some other difference so that we can make a distinction between going out there and working hard, which works for some people, and actually doing it with balance, as you say, and with relaxation and achieving what you want?
Another
What's
great
the
question. It's pure choice. Okay, so you can be Elon Musk, but if you read the biography, he's done amazing things, but he's also his personal life and health life is
distinction?
just so messed up. I don't want that for me. I don't want to be on the distraction, of alcohol or drugs or something. And I don't want to work 16 hours a day because I love everything else I do. I love walking in nature. I love swimming. I love dancing. I love doing all the things that I do domestically. I love conversation and cooking together and all that kind of stuff. I want a balanced life. So TrevorGBlake.com is about success with what you can see on here on my logo here. It's success with balance, and it's purely a choice. And I'm not judging anyone. It's your choice. You can work 16 hours a day and be successful. Brilliant. Well done. But you might be on your third marriage and you might be distracting yourself with some antidepressants or something. Your choice. Good.
Certainly.
The alternative is, with no judgment, is I, Trevor G. Blake, I'm actually very lazy and I love nothing more than lying in a hammock.
As am I.
I love it. And I don't want to give that up. I love nothing more than the wonderful conversations I have with Jess, is my new wife. And so I love nothing more than we sit down for dinner and we're still sat down for dinner 4 hours later. That's life for me. So I love that. So I like having the businesses, the financial independence, and then maybe I have to sacrifice a certain level, I suppose, in order to have the balance. So I'm probably not going to be the richest man in the world or the universe, and I really don't want to be because I don't want the security and the infiltration in my life. I really want to be able to chill and travel and
So you decide, it's a decision. Just one
choice.
last thing I wanted to get into because it seems we're running out of time. It's very interesting to me. I'm not sure if I quite understand it. You talked about the feminine, and we're going into the age of the feminine. I know we have to do it very quickly, but and this could be taken the wrong way, and I don't want it to because I have a wife, I have a stepdaughter, and I love also the feminine aspect. But it seems to me, Mr. Blake, that the women that I've dealt with and worked with are actually very intellectual. They have to always think about the future and they have to have the next step. It's the men that I've worked with that seems to be more like, well, I really don't care how we're going to get there. We're just going to get there. How is it that you associate the feminine with this new energy of actually being what we want to do, which is success with less ease? And furthermore, you made a statement that you said the women of ancient times, like the queens, they did not take prisoners, and
No.
they did not they left their wounded. And you said this as if this was a good thing. Is this a good thing, Mr. Blake? And how are we to understand this whole feminine thing? Just briefly.
It's the quickest and easiest way is to think of it visually. So we've come from, since 1284, we've been living in what we would label, and it's not a gender conversation, as you said, but we label it. We have to label, right? So we have to try and understand stuff. So we give everything labels. We have names, everything. So we labeled it masculine energy, and it's linear in visual. It's linear, step by step, clipboard mentality, consensus to get to a decision. Have a problem, call a meeting. Have a problem, hire somebody. Build a railroad, build a tower, everything's hierarchical. That's masculine. And that's been fine for as long as it's been fine. Prior to that, before 1284, it was feminine. Since 2020, it's feminine. What's the difference visually? What we call feminine energy is spiraling really fast. It looks different and it behaves differently. And the secret of matching, I've had to completely change how I manage my companies and how I behave as a manager, as a CEO, to match the feminine energy. So I know that's why I have no employees. So I no longer have the time to adapt. Everything's changing so fast because it's spiraling energy. So technology changes every single day. All of these huge companies that were in the book Built to Last and Good to whatever it was called, they're gone. Circuit Cities, Border Books, they're gone. They're history because
Built to last is gone.
Built to Last is
That's
finished.
incredible.
So the average age of a company used, 15 years ago, the average age was 75 years, and now it's 5. So everything's moving really quickly, and you have to get in and out quickly. So you have to change your whole perception of business, your whole perception of life to an extent. And the funny thing is about that spiraling energy, like a tornado, if you're in it, you're safe. If you're outside it, you're going to get killed.
You're
And
gonna get
so
killed.
you've got to get on board. You've got to change the way you think, and that one has to change the way one thinks and the way and how one behaves. So I know we're running out of time. So the funniest thing for me is, as an entrepreneur, in the old energy, negotiations would take months and the opposite sides of the table and give a little, take a little, all this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Now negotiations are, do you want it or not? It's just
It's
done.
sort of like a Zen koan, isn't it, Mr. Blake? You have to just do it immediately. Use your right brain, not your left brain.
And also you have to use your intuition. Okay, you're going to make decisions
Your intuition.
based on your intuition, and there's no one to blame, and there's no one to look for help anymore. There's no time. So building, deepening your connect. This is the important thing. That's so in transformation experience, we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming in now, going, "What's going wrong? Help me, please! I beg of you." And so I get them say, "Okay, you need to build your intuition. You've got to be able to make instant decisions." And I was lucky enough, with my mother, my late wife, my current wife, they're really good at that. Their intuition is so I think women have a huge advantage now because their intuitions are sparking a little more obviously than male intuition. And for men, I say, okay, figure that one out, look at it, say, okay, you're gonna have to work on your intuition now.
And we need to bring more of them on board. But Mr. Blake, just one last thing. If you wanted to tell our viewers one statement about how to shift to this success with ease, what would you tell us?
The most important thing is have fun.
That's the most important thing.
If it's not fun, why
Beautiful.
bother? Why do it? It's got to be fun.
Exactly. That's what we're here for.
For me, that's
So,
everything.
Mr. Blake, that's everything. I know I would love to talk to you for 2 or 3 hours. I had more questions, but it's really been my honor, and I'd love to have you as a guest again on our show. Again, Mr. Blake, we can work with Mr. Blake, and I'm going to put this website. It's www.trevorgblake.com/Javier, and you will get a $500 discount at the checkout for his transformation course. So, Mr. Blake, it's really been my honor, and we hope to see you again. Stay warm there in California.
Thank you, Javier. Fantastic questions. I really do appreciate them. Very deep.
Thank you. Much love and appreciation. We'll see you.